Whoops. Okay, so starting into week 6 tonight, 6 of 8, so getting very near the end, and had a guest, so we're probably a few minutes late. I started recording earlier. I can't remember what I put in the introduction there, but this week we're going to look at other software, so Git integrations, things where we would be expected to write code is often integrated in. Our guest this evening was from the Career Link department, place the department here at Ivy Tech to help you find a job. A resume is a great thing to help in the motion control system. Right? You might have a lot of different stuff on your resume, different versions of your resume. You want to keep organized and get readily available. So it's a good version for that. More than just code. Most of the integrations I had in mind to just kind of glance off involve places where we would write code, because that's what Git was created for, but it's not the only thing we might want to keep separate versions of. A couple other things. A big deal this week with external software. We've been doing everything in the terminal so far. And I think coming into the class, everybody was already familiar with GitHub. And there's a web interface, a little bit of drag and drop features, functionality there, but the drag and drop functionality there was somewhat limited. So external software for that. And that's what the discussion board's about this week. We're going to look at some of those. I guess I can give a quick preview now. We're going to look at this later. I guess we'll just jump in and start looking at things, because there's a few different things, and I have something in my note from last week that some of y'all I don't think you would have seen in your previous classes about documentation when we talked about that ask question. How many people had seen the documentation generators? And there were more no's than yeses, so I added that to my notes this week to look at stuff. Let me just open one up here. So here's the one that when I was getting prepared for the week. Saturday or Sunday, I created this. I'm just going to open this as the blog. And everything we've seen so far this semester, we just go in here. There's nothing fancy in this. This is my clipboard. Some of the files, I just match the keyboard to have something in there. So even more randomness than what we've seen in class examples at times. But everything we've done so far would open the terminal here in Sublime. I have that integrated in mind and do work there. But notice down here in the status bar, at the bottom of my screen, there's the Git icon. Says currently on the main branch and all. You might not have this other software yet, but Sublime Text has the sister software called Sublime Merge. So if I click that icon, I get a GUI application for dealing with all the Git stuff. So this is from the prep work on Sunday. I think it was Sunday. Might have been on Saturday. Somewhere over the weekend when I was getting ready for this week's lecture. Built this repository, and we can see everything that's happened along the way, the stashes. It's part of Sublime, so hit Control P and just manually enter the stuff. So like stash, and I like this one. Predictive text shows what the terminal command is for that. But it's sort of like sister software to that. We have lots and lots of control over there in the graphic user interface. So we're going to look at a couple of those this week. And I will probably use this one quite a bit when we start looking at them. And then we'll look at a couple others. And you all have a discussion board assignment where you're going to go look at a couple and look at them. But I thought I'd open this now. So Sublime Merge, and it has to come back to the Sublime. So we'll be looking at this time. If you want to install it before then, you can just look for it. I think I also added that link to the discussion board instructions as well. There's several there. We're going to look at those before long. remove this, that way Sublime's in a good, clean starting state. Oh, one thing I had in my notes here that we didn't see, let me just sort of initialize a new repository. So I'm gonna, a way that we haven't seen this semester, but y'all probably were well aware that you can do it. If you're on a Mac, I'm going to show a Windows specific feature. There's a lot of Windows users, but we have the hotkeys in Windows like normal. So like Windows E is going to open up the File Explorer, which on Windows has an address bar. Most of the ones on Linux also have an address bar, but for some reason Finder on Mac does not have an address bar, so we don't have this functionality on Finder. There's probably other File Explorer apps you can install on your Mac that would have it. But if you have a File Explorer as an address bar, we can do all our navigation like we would do in the terminal, like go into the documents and then the delete folder, sort of like the CD command right there in one of our terminals. I wish I had like command prompt or something. Control Shift N will open up a new folder. I'll just keep it called new folder. But that's not the only instructions we have there. And we can pass all the terminal commands in. So we haven't seen it yet, but this is something I did over the weekend when I was doing that prep work. I just did it right here and realized that we hadn't done this in class. So on Windows File Explorer, we'll add in a moment, but get initialized and then dot for the current directory again. And without even going anywhere else, we can initialize the repository right here. So in a sense, Git is integrated here, but only in the way that we have access to the terminal. You wouldn't want to put passing terminal commands that you're expecting responses from. So like we could run git log, but we wouldn't see it here. And other things like if we made a new text or right click and go to new text document. That's a good name for it, new text document. Put some words in there, save that and close it. Git add dot. Yeah, I was doing all this over the weekend and realized that we had never seen it done that way in class. And I do it this way. This is a useful way to do our basic commits because now that those files have been saved, go ahead and commit. This one is dependent if your terminal is still set to use VI for your text editor, you want to pass in the short message like dash M summary, line break, long description. Pass in the short version there. But if you have it set to open with an external text editor like Sublime or Code, which from watching the recordings, I'm pretty sure everybody in class has set up to do that way. It looks like I'm all of your record, all of the little video homework submissions y'all have sent. Looks like everybody's VS Code opens up immediately. And then do our commit message, make it commit. That's good, save that, close it. There. And we can do all of that stuff from Windows File Explorer, the basic functionality. Things where we need to read, like we want to check out. Let me make another branch. Alt D git checkout dash B other, and make a new folder, new file. Oh, and I'll just kind of mouse the keyboard because then once again, get add dot. The address bar is really a place that we can enter terminal commands. The git commit. I'll do it the short way this time. As in that commit, but then we can go up and get checkout main and jump back and forth between our versions right here. So just for checking out the branches, if you know the name of the branches, that's incredibly useful. That's the part I was trying to get to. We can do a whole bunch of stuff, but checkout, as far as alternate branches, you probably don't have the commit hash names committed to memory for your repository. But jumping between branches, you probably know what the branches are called, and you can do that right there the same way you would navigate between folders, which is kind of the place we want to see the different versions of our files. So a good place there, not quite a full integration. Where's a good place to start with that? Good. So places where we would write code. So like the GitHub game engine. This should start out really quick. I have a summer camp for high schoolers running next week, so I've been getting ready for that. This was the game I was making yesterday and today. Just that level might look familiar to some people. Just recreating a classic game and practice the game engine before I give a bunch of lectures on it next week. But right up here, over in the top right, if I scroll over, there's this tab that says commit, and well, here's unstaged changes. So you can see here, there's a version control thing down where our normal console and debugger things are. If you're not familiar with this particular game engine, that output and debugging information like normal, and one of the tabs is for version control. So Git is fully integrated right in here. I can see the stage stuff, make a commit right here, check out the earlier commits, see the name and all that stuff. So like this is the information we would get from the short log, but obviously it's not quite going to fit if we got all the information back from Git. So that thing that we looked at a couple times earlier in the semester with, I keep looking at the TV and it's throwing me off because the Zoom calls were right behind, right in front of what I was clicking, or the Zoom thumbnails. But like that formatting the log, they use the regular Git log, and then all that formatting stuff to make it fit in the window here, and chose color schemes that fit with the rest of the engine. But fully integrated in there. Obviously, game engine is a place we're going to want lots of versions of. The rule of thumb for game engine is commit as often as possible, because little things happen and we tend to go back a lot. But most of our IDEs, I know you all are familiar with it in VS Code, so I'll skip that, or Apache NetBeans. I don't have any installed on my computer, but pretty much any IDE is going to have it. I didn't think I have any projects that let me create a new project. Create an AMP project so it'll load quicker. Java application 3 sounds like a good name for it. Actually, on the one that's open on the thing, you can see the name of the project, and then right next to it is main. So it knows about version control. That one's already on, has a Git repository. It recognizes the branches. There's lots of color coding in here. It'll change file names. The color coding in NetBeans is really good. On this new project here, under the team tab, it's set up to go with several different version control systems, so not just Git. Like the cloner repository, and yeah, if I go ahead and initialize that, we can go over to the terminal where that's at and run the int command, or we can do it right here for us. Fully integrated into the software. There we go. So then now it's trying to show hash code. Nothing's happened. So the hash code is all, the hash code for the commit is all zeros, which means nothing's been committed yet. And all of the files that were generated to start here are already color coded in green to show -A. Most of our IDEs, if you're in a good IDE, so NetBeans or Eclipse or IDEA for Java, PyCharm does this as well. It automatically stages your files. So by default, everything is automatically gets added to the repository, and you have to pull it out if you don't want it. And under tools, or now if we go to team, now that it's been initialized as a repository, we have a lot of different options as well. Things are automatically added. Click that, make a commit, all the message you can see. This is a nice functionality. PyCharm has this one as well. Notice how we get a second chance to unstage our file during the commit. Not all of our things put that integration in there. I'm just going to match the keyboard because we're just looking at the quick version. So I would use the old name. So I guess right there we can tell it didn't come with the. It brought its own installation of Git instead of the current one. You can see all the differences. No tracking, but fully integrated in there. That's going to happen in most of our IDEs. I'll look at Spider. I believe everybody in here has used Python before, right?
Yes.
I know those who've had me in class all know about the Spider IDE. So while this starts up, this is by far my favorite IDE to work in and to do Python code in. So search for Spider IDE, Spider with a Y, and make sure you put IDE because there's high-end ski clothing and other ski apparel, boots and skis, and a bunch of high-end ski stuff. Also, it's also Spider with a Y, and it'll default to that first, or Google will default to that first on search engines. If you haven't seen this yet, it's a IDE for Python, but usually Python was an afterthought for our IDEs. Like Eclipse has been around for 20 years, same thing with NetBeans. So yeah, I will Eclipse. Eclipse has been around for like 20 years, so there's a plugin. Whenever Python started getting popular, they made a plugin so that this very popular IDE would work with Python. And as Python became more popular, that plugin eventually expanded and then separated and became its own software independently, and that's PyCharm. So a really nice one that has a well-established IDE that's been building functionality for decades. It's really nice to work with. But Python was an afterthought there. And in most of my IDEs, Python was an afterthought. This particular one was entirely coded in Python. So its focus from the beginning was for writing Python code and managing Python projects. And everything about this IDE was intended to be for Python. It wasn't just Python added in as an afterthought afterwards. Definitely my preferred place to work with any Python code. I know those who have had any class before probably mentioned this before. So to get integration in here, it does need to be a project. So you want to create a new project. I'll create a new directory. These buttons are backwards for some reason. If you go to the directory where you want to put it, so I put it in the delete directory, then create the name, and it'll add the name for the folder the project goes in afterwards. In class, sounds like a good name for that. And when we create it, get this project window opened over here, which is just a Spider project. I look at the files over here, documents, delete. This one, yeah. So it has the files for the spider project, all of the organization and configurations and stuff for that. But if we go ahead and right now, if we right click, I'll go ahead and right click on that project and give it a second so you can see what's on here. So the new rename, the basic functionality stuff for a folder, and then open the console. But if we go ahead and initialize this, and part of the reason I wanted to show this one is you may not have seen this before. If you want to enter terminal commands from the IPython console, start with an exclamation mark. So if you do exclamation mark git initialize and then dot, which by the way, the dot is optional. I tend to do that out of habit. On init, the dot is optional and it will initialize the folder you're in if you leave that one off. If you're somewhere else, if you're somewhere else on your computer, you have to put the name of the directory in there. But if it's the directory you're in, you can leave that dot off. I've been using that off to make sure. I'm not sure if I explicitly stated it at any point. So now it's a Git repository. And if I right click on the folder now, notice that I got more buttons over here. One for commit, one for browsing repository. Yeah, so Git integrations. Let's take this a step further. Git's going to be integrated in a lot of software. Any place we expect to write code, our text editors, our IDEs. I pull up a game engine. Obviously, that's not the only game engine that has to be integrated. Any place we're expected to be developing programs, Git's pretty much going to be integrated. And it's really, really easy to do so because we're just running terminal commands, right? So I'm just going to do a simple hello world because I want to add some Git integration into a Python program. And I don't want the Python, so I'm just going to do the print hello world so there's no Python clutter getting in the way of what we're going to look at. So, right, here's our application, print hello world. Nothing too fancy there. I'll go ahead and save it right here in the project as read.py. But maybe we'll do a little bit more. Print, here's what's going on so far. And has anybody in here ever had to run terminal commands for your Python script? Okay.
Are you talking about the shell?
Like actually go back to the terminal and run a command.
Oh,
So
isn't it just like Python 3 file name or something like that?
Python has built-in things, some built-in functionality. What would be one? IP config. So that's definitely not in the Python functionality. So we'll open PowerShell, IP config and get all that information. That is explicitly something to run in a terminal and not for, and the Python doesn't have built-in. Anybody ever done stuff like that before? I'm guessing not. So there's two ways we can do it. Most often it's preferred to use the SDEV module. We import this, and then this has a thing in a class in there called subprocess. And in subprocess, we pass in an array of terminal commands. This one is generally preferred. That's why I asked that question, because this is generally preferred if we're going to do that, because this one runs asynchronously, which means we will pass that command back to the operating system, and then our program will keep doing something else. But if we're integrating our software Git into our software, we're going to run those terminal commands, but we probably but we don't want that happening asynchronously. So instead of subprocess, the OS module also has one we can call os.system, and this will allow us to print or to run terminal commands from here. So let me do this. Yeah, ls-l. I'm pretty sure that's going to run in the PowerShell, so we'll recognize that. No, it doesn't. Let me run. It runs the command. It's apparently running a command prompt, not PowerShell. Okay, so if I run the dir command, notice I get the directory listing from Windows command prompt. Well, that's how we've been entering our commands. So git log one should tell us all the commits and stuff, but we haven't made any commits yet. So I'm going to save this, and right now it's probably tells no. Yeah. Of course. Git log one line, and while I'm up here fixing stuff, I might as well grab, because at some point we might go back. And right now, current branch does not have any commits yet, so we need some commits so we can see that. So I'll come over here to the left and the project menu and right click and go ahead and make commit. And has anybody seen this application? Does that look familiar? So Spider, instead of making a whole big fancy thing like what I pulled up from Sublime earlier, this particular one, let me click on that. That is software you would have got when you installed Git. So along with Git Bash, there's also Git GUI. It just came with a actually, it came with the installation of Git GUI. I'll open that one remotely again. Actually, let me do a new repository here, because there is something funny about the new repository if you use Git GUI, so I might as well point that out while we're here. Clone is straightforward. Just go grab the address of the one you want to clone. If you already have an existing one, just navigate to it. That's straightforward. For create repository, there is a little catch on here that throws some people off at first. Some go in the delete folder, my normal working folder, and you would probably expect at this point that we create a new folder, and then that's the one we point to. But for some reason with Git GUI, if we did that, if we created a folder here and then pointed at it, it would put another folder inside of that folder and create that, make that our repository. So if you're using the Git GUI that came with Git, you want to point at the parent directory and then back over. So you point at the parent directory and then just type in the name you want for it. So then / GUI Git. I'll just flip the name around. Excuse me. And then here is the software that the GUI software that actually ships with Git. So when you're doing your discussion board this week and talking to your classmates about different GUI software, make sure you compare it to the official one that comes with it. I think it's a good comparison point, right? Because that should be the bare minimum. We'll look at it in the Spider repository, and obviously your assignment is to try out different things, so you're going to want to click on a whole bunch of different buttons. Most of them should look straightforward. While you're doing that, make sure you do the visualize branch history along the way. We won't see anything here. Oh yeah, there's no history on this one. We'll look at that from Spider in a moment. But the one here, I think this is one of the best history versions out there. The ones we're going to look at later, if maybe start on tonight and then look at a couple more on Thursday. There's some really nice GUIs. But that basic one, everything you see on that history is a button. It looks like a huge text file covered with words, and basically every single word there is a button you click on. So I'm coming back over to Spider. So instead of doing a whole bunch of things here, they just integrated in that basic one. So we come over here and click to commit. Usually this is pretty straightforward. We just go down the buttons. So rescan looks through to see what all unstaged changes there are. Next button down, stage changed. Stage on my own, yeah. So got them on the stage. Sign off will put your name there. So I guess that one's actually a little bit out of order. Before we do that, we want to enter our commit message. So initialize project, created a small app that integrates with Git SCM. And sign or like we've seen before, since we're probably going to end up using one of the servers that make this theme, like it is a centralized system, but it is a distributed system. Anything that runs on GitHub, we could run on any other computer. There's nothing special about GitHub except that those servers are guaranteed to be working. We can take that. We can actually. There's a Git desktop. That's another one. GitHub desktop. Another one you all should probably check out this week. And if you have GitHub desktop running, then that computer is exactly like GitHub. It's a centralized system of all clients, so you can just tie into that and run your team's own local version of GitHub. Explicitly GitHub, not something similar to GitHub. As long as you put GitHub desktop on there. But whichever one we use, we're probably going to have the issue trackers. Those are standard everywhere. So resolve issue number 3, and I'll just go ahead and commit. Then hit commit. And if there's a remote repository, just hit push it back to the remote origin. We kind of walk through there. And then that other button I was pointing at to visualize the branch history or all history. That's what we get if we right click and go to browse repository here in Spider. It opens up the other one. Not the fanciest graphics, but pretty much every single thing you see on there is a button. They're not just words. So whatever we want to see, we can go click on that and get all of our changes. All the stuff down here, main branch, initialize repositories. We have different branching. So gets fully integrated. Spider took the easy way. That was created by some really, really smart people at MIT that were tired of Python being an afterthought in all the IDEs because they were data analysts. They were data analyst people, data analytics people. That's what I say. That's the right word for that. Some data analytics people at MIT were tired of the language that they used being an afterthought. So they sat down and wrote Spider entirely in Python. Every bit of code for this IDE was written in Python with Python in mind. So it behaves differently than some of the other IDEs. If you haven't seen it before, it would be my recommendation. They were really, really smart people. So instead of wasting a bunch of time for the Git integration, they just, in the GUI, they just worked, they just went with the one that came with Git. Because if you install Git, then you have, this is called Git K, and the other one is Git GUI. They just worked that right in there. But is that line enough to see how, give you an idea of how we integrate that? So now we have that in our repository. I could add another file Yeah, I'll just keep it here. Print another file. Add that, save that, add it. Sure, untitles the name. I'm gonna move on to something else here very, very shortly. Make the commit, which we can do here, stage the file. I'm just gonna sign off on it and hit commit. I'll just use that one because we're gonna have to put a message. If you're on a team, that's kind of nice. The message is just who signed off on it, which is really the blame. We'll see blame. That's a prominent feature in all of our Git GUI applications. When we were doing stuff in the terminal, blame was very, very brief. It was just quickly mentioned and we saw it there. So now, if I go back and run that first one, you can see there's a little bit more going on. But from that one line, OS.system, and then the terminal command we would enter. And you don't know a whole lot of terminal commands about Git now, right? Is that enough for you to see how we would integrate, how to integrate Git into your own application? Or would you like to see me do a couple other things? We probably
I think I've seen this, but it was for something else, like the OS system. I saw it in something else.
So that's
Yeah.
That's all we need in order to integrate Git into the application we're making. So probably something like a GUI, right? Some Django web app, or maybe you're doing something really simple and just launch enter GUI, TK interface package. You probably put it in functions. So we can make like a revert function. With, what do you call it, hash? No, hash is the keyword. So call it commit. So whichever commit we want to run to, and when this method is called, we're going to run system and pass in git revert. Let's commit. And then build up functionality that way so that you can run all those commands from a GUI or whatever your software is. Our guest this evening from CareerLink. A resume is a great thing to have in different versions. Software is not the only thing that we would want lots of different versions from, and want to have quick access to all the different versions without coming up with lots of names and things that would be a little bit more confusing. Hopefully that makes sense. Nobody's really saying anything. I could cover more of it, but we know the terminal commands, and it's from your Python script. It's just os.system to run those. You could do it as sys.subprocess. The reason we would normally that one is generally preferred because it's asynchronous. So our Python application can keep doing stuff while that other thing runs as a background, and then we'll get the results when we get the results. But for something like Git integration, we would probably want that done synchronously. So os.system, at least personally, I prefer the os.system to integrate it. So a very, very useful functionality as far as this course, like being the test run of things. I think I'm probably going to add that into the learning objectives before I take it to the curriculum committee. But again, this isn't hard. Everybody, by the time they take this class, will know a little bit of coding. So we'll just say actually integrate Git into your own application would make a good course objective. Something to bring out on the resume. It sounds really fancy. It sounds really fancy for just such a simple concept, right? But we have Git integrations just about everywhere. Passing time to the break, I'm going to come back over to Sublime and look at some of the integrations here. So like initially Sublime had the integration with some GUI functionality work in here. I think in Sublime 3, they moved it over to its own application, Sublime Merge. So they're like sister applications, they're designed to go together. So even before if you install Sublime Text but not Sublime Merge, there's some buttons in there that refer to it. And some of our settings already refer to it, things like that. Let's all look at settings. Control P, have we seen that? Oh, okay. I did not click on that button before that. So after you download it, so in the chat room it says when you click on the main, that thing I did earlier, it opens the download link. So they're already kind of work together. I don't think I've done this all semester because I don't ever do it. If you like entering commands directly, if you push Control P, or in fact, it might be Command B or Command Shift B. B or P, I believe both of them work if you're using Sublime. That gets on command palette. So like Control P, and I can type in merge. Oh, whoops, Control Shift P, make sure you hit the shift. Control P searches through your project. Control Shift P opens the command palette. So you can type in like merge. And oh, this is in the repository. We open that repository, I had it. This one will work. Okay. Sublime current directory. There we go. So now if I hit Control Shift P and look for merge, is it on? Okay. The function. The little ring was jumped for some reason until I clicked on a file. Okay, there we go. Now it knows it's a repository, so I start typing in merge and we get all of the commands along with the hotkeys. Some people like to run the commands right there. They'll just hit Control Shift P and type in the instruction they want the text editor to go for. But there's a lot of settings built in here. Let me go back to the earlier one, so I don't have too many of them. Exclusive. In Sublime, all of our settings are in JSON. If you haven't seen this before, we go to Preferences and Settings. On the left-hand side is the default settings, and any of those you want to override, you just put that overrides on the right-hand side. So default's on the left, overrides on the right. And if you try to type in here, it will give you a message that it's read-only. I'll say Control F and look for Git, so we can find a couple things here in default settings. So find the next one. So here's the little icons, the little dots and flags. Some icons, those are useful. What's next? So here's that one down in the status bar, that button that automatically opens merge, or like Samantha put in the chat room. If you don't have Sublime Merge installed, it takes you to the download page. You can get it. So we have some Git functionality built in there already. So the status, that's all the changing colors on the icons. Instead of just putting a circle beside the files, when a hollow circle or a hollow flag, we get colored versions on there. What next? if you want a particular home directory, oh, this one. I've never figured out what this one does. I didn't look down at the command. You can see the comment there. Established for repository in the user's home directory. This is disabled by default. Typically accidental and can cause heavy CPU usage related to the file system launch. I've tried that a few times, switching it to true, and I never noticed the difference. I'm not sure what that does. It says heavy CPU usage, so I usually keep that one to false. One of the big advantages of Sublime is if you have a GPU or even like Intel integrated GPU, if you have GPU functionality, Sublime will run on the GPU. And then the CPU is still free for whatever code you want to use. That's one of the main reasons I go with Sublime. So this thing that has heavy CPU usage, I usually just keep that at false, but every once in a while I'll see it on the list here and try to turn it on and can't really see what it's on. This is a nice one. If you use Sublime, you might want to switch this. It can either be index or head. So set the difference to head, and it color codes. It put color coded on there. Actually, let me show you what it does. This one work. So if I open that in Sublime again, so I open up Sublime here. Where's my sidebar? Oops. Sidebars. Yeah, so we're in this Git repository, so in this file, and change this to like import. So this, notice how we get that little orange, little color coding. Very subtle, so it's not going to be distracting. If I take out this line altogether, and this is different. Another random thing. So it just puts stuff on there, and notice we get that color coding down the side. That's the difference. Cancel. And okay, what was this one? And by default, it's set to index, which means it's looking at itself. So you don't get much change, many changes. That's the changes made after the head. So if you switch that to head, it color codes what's being changed. That's a useful functionality there. You can look through this, and if you use Sublime, you probably want to look through this. As you can see, there's there's comments all over the place, but there's 870 lines of settings. So there's a lot of customization we can do, and then you can add your own afterwards. As far as Git integration, there's also key bindings, which again is JSON. So if we want to add more key bindings, so like here's how I've been opening the terminal all this semester in Sublime. Terminus is a plugin, which is a little bit nicer than just directly putting the panel in there. It handles some stuff in the background for us. So I turn that on. You can also just put PowerShell directly in the panel without anything extra there. This keyboard to turn it on and off. Sometimes if I'm going to be going back and forth to Sublime merge, the terminal command is smurge. I really like that name. Jumping back and forth between Sublime text and Sublime merge, I'll put that on just one keyboard command. Or to get to a particular thing, the stuff we're going to look at after the break, I have a bunch of just single keys. So like Control Shift G and O is another way to just open the repository in Sublime merge. Or if I want specific, like the history of a particular file, and only that particular file, like I'll push Control Shift G, then pause and hit F. and that'll open just the file history. We're gonna look at that stuff. I guess we'll look at one chapter, and then we'll look at better ones later in the week. If you change any settings, you have to restart the file, so close it and restart it. Looks like it's coming up a good time for a break, and then we can look at some of those features. But to summarize, Git is integrated in a lot of things. It's already in any place, pretty much any place we can be expected to write code, Git is already integrated into. And it is really, really easy to integrate Git into our own applications. We just need to run those terminal commands. Oh, real quick before we take a break, is Fiverr still open? Real quick before we take a break, let me add one thing to that. The product floor stayed open. So a lot of times before we run any Git commands, we want to make sure that it's a Git repository. So the easiest way to do that is just look for this folder right here. Git folder. So we can also come over here, also import os.path. And then if os.path is there, that checks if something is a directory. So dot for the current location, if we have a .git folder, then that means we are in a directory. And then we can run that. So you probably want to run that check beforehand. I realized while I was showing something else over in the text editor that I didn't put that in there. And it's always a good idea to make sure we're going to get directory. It's pretty common to go up directories. So if a current folder isn't a Git directory, isn't a Git repository, is it inside of a Git repository? Or is the parent folder inside of a Git repository? And we'll walk up several layers to see if we're in a Git repository. Going down can be very, very complicated. So usually it's fairly advanced Git integrations before we go down into directories and check all the subfolders to see if there's a Git repository nearby. But looking, check if the current one, or maybe run through a loop and go up directories. Check the parent directory. Is it a Git? Or then check to see if it's a Git repository. But that right there is all we need to make. That's enough to see if we have a repository. And if it is, then we can start running those Git commands right there and integrate the version control directly in our software that we're making, instead of having a separate functionality for it. I'll just save that and go that way. But this week we're going to be looking at some of those integration things. So I guess maybe to start with, we'll look at Sublime Text. Everybody's on Zoom calls will probably be kind of quick, but probably a good time for a break. Everybody's on Zoom call, we probably could have taken a break. I wouldn't have noticed, but I'm getting really thirsty, so I need to sip a coffee before I talk for a few more minutes and start looking at the software. But it's obviously something you're going to want to click around in for a few minutes. If 5 minutes take okay? Is everybody on Zoom call?
Yeah, that's fine.
Usually I do 10 minutes in the classroom, but everybody's on Zoom, so we'll just do 5 minutes and we'll start looking at Sublime Merge.
Okay.
See y'all in just a moment.